Diana, do you want to just give them a little background as to why Project Success started?
Okay. We started Project Success last year in 6th grade. We had a large number of students that were really poor readers. And so last year I think they served even more 6th graders than we've served this year. But we were wondering what we could do to try to help bump their reading skills up. And they were doing this in 4th grade, I believe, in the district, and liked it. So then some 5th graders were doing it, so we thought it was natural to do it with 6th graders. The only problem was that they didn't have materials that our kids hadn't already read. So they quickly compiled a set of books for our 6th graders, which then they had to compile another set for this year because then it goes up to 7th grade. And so we've been using it now. We identify kids who are in the 40th percentile or below on their reading ITBS. We look at a DRP reading score, which we give across the district. And what else did we look at? We took them in on a Jostens program that we have also, and I tested kids who might qualify to see where their reading scores were there also. And that's how I identified the students that I took. And I started with about 15 students on our team. And they're supposed to receive this in addition to their regular language arts instruction, not instead of. And it's supposed to be done quick, not to be stretched out throughout the year. It's supposed to get them in, get them the help right away, and then get them right back out. And I felt that was a motivating thing. I can't remember how many weeks it's supposed to take, but I did write down how many weeks it took me, but I forgot. It took me about 20 weeks, if that's correct. I started in September and finished at the beginning of 3rd trimester.
Do they meet every day?
Every day we met. Once in a while, if something was going on, we would not do our Project Success lesson, and that's because of the way I worked it into my classes. And so sometimes we would have to do something for the regular language arts, but just about every single day. And another key factor is that they're supposed to be reading another book on their own at home as well for 15 to 20 minutes a day. And so they really get a lot of reading, and we went through tons of books. And I brought some examples of what they start with and what they end up with. They started with somewhere in Africa, which there's a lot of pictures and not many words, and they still chunk this. They don't even read this in one day. And we have some fiction, and we have some nonfiction. And here you see that it gradually gets more words per page. And it's also very multicultural. We have somewhere in Africa, and then we have Alvin Ailey, we have Mary McLeod Bethune, we read some biographies. And then they have some mythology, some folklore. There's the legend of Sleepy Hollow. And they eventually end up with chapter books. And we finished with Snow Treasures. So they start with this book and end up with this one. And so the reading gets to be a lot more every day. We start with revisiting. Sometimes revisiting is talking to them about a book that they're reading in their own time. And a lot of times it also asks them to apply the strategies, the 4 main strategies, and how are they using those strategies in their free reading books. Sometimes they are to grab books off the shelf that they've read from Project Success, while I would take a student and do some individual testing, whether it be on their comprehension or their decoding. And so you can keep track and monitor their progress as you go along. And then the next 5 minutes we review the story that we read the day before, or the part of the story we read the day before. And sometimes we'll review the strategies. At the very beginning, you review the strategies and say, oh, who can tell me what clarify is, who can tell me what summarize is, and we review those. And then they gradually just start reviewing the parts of the story they read before. And then we go to rehearsing, and that's when they do some previewing strategies, such as looking over the book, looking at the titles of the chapters, looking for some words they don't understand before they even read it. And then they go ahead and they read. And so that only accounts for about 10 to 15 minutes of the lesson. And sometimes when they start out with Somewhere in Africa, they don't need 10 or 15 minutes to read the 2 pages or 3 pages. When they got to Snow Treasures, sometimes they needed more than that. It's not supposed to be, you're not supposed to really be extremely flexible with it. You're supposed to stop it at 15 minutes. And usually we could get it in. But if they didn't, then sometimes I would maybe either assign it as homework or we would extend the reading time a little bit. And then the last thing we do for another 5 to 10 minutes is respond and reflect. And that's when we did the reciprocal teaching, where we have another student who is a teacher and asks the questions, and they have to apply the different strategies with each lesson. They do a prediction, and then that's it. And so they follow that same format every single day. They have a workbook that's got the outlines, the story maps. There's different story maps with each story. This one's used quite often, but there's other formats also. And there's a copy of it in the student handbook, as well as I used an overhead, but they have posters that you can use. I found it easier to write on the overhead so they could see it, and I didn't have my back to them, so I did it on an overhead instead of the poster.
Big laminate.